The emperor who declared war on chickens, power does strange things to the human mind. It builds empires, topples nations, and sometimes it drives rulers to war with enemies that don't exist. Tonight's story takes us deep into the imperial courts of ancient China, to a time when fear was stronger than reason, and paranoia was law. Imagine this: an emperor whose army stretched to the horizon, whose word could condemn thousands with a gesture, whose throne was carved from victory itself. Yet he spent his nights haunted by a single sound. Not the roar of battle, not the clash of swords, but the crow of a rooster breaking the dawn. What began as a whisper in his palace would turn into one of the strangest and most terrifying decrees in recorded history. A command that silenced villages, starved families, and erased an entire species from his empire. All because the most powerful man in the world believed the birds were plotting against him. This is no fable, no bedtime story. This is the true, unsettling tale of the emperor who declared war on chickens. Before he became a man feared by millions, Liu Zhen was a boy raised in shadows. Born into the glittering yet dangerous heart of the Han dynasty, his earliest memories were not of toys or lullabies, but of whispers behind locked doors, of servants disappearing overnight, of dinners where every sip of tea could be your last. In the imperial palace, survival was a game of masks, and even children learned to watch every word, every breath, lest it betray them. The dynasty he was destined to rule was a nest of vipers. Rival clans schemed for power, generals rose and fell in the blink of an eye, and assassination was a language everyone understood. As a boy, Liu Zhen witnessed his uncle being poisoned at a banquet, his cousin being dragged screaming into the night, never to be seen again. Each incident carved fear deeper into his mind, teaching him one brutal lesson: trust is death. By the time he was crowned emperor, still young, barely a man, that fear had already hardened into paranoia. He trusted no advisor fully, no family member completely. He slept with a dagger beneath his pillow and ordered his meals tasted 3 times before a single bite passed his lips. Court historians wrote that his eyes rarely blinked, as if every corner of his palace might hide a traitor waiting to strike. He was powerful, yes, but also utterly alone, locked in a golden cage of suspicion and dread. And it was in this fragile state of mind that one strange idea would soon take root, whispered in darkness, a seed that would grow into one of the most bizarre and haunting decrees in human history. It began with a rumor. At first, nothing unusual rumors had always swirled around the Han court like smoke. But this one was different. It was dangerous, unnerving, impossible to explain. The emperor's most secret war plans, campaigns drawn up in silence, shared only with his inner circle, were somehow reaching his enemies. Ambushes sprang from nowhere. Rival lords moved their armies as if reading his mind. And each betrayal carved deeper lines of rage and fear into Liu Zhen's face. Night after night, council meetings dragged on until the candles died, the emperor's eyes bloodshot and unblinking as he demanded answers. How? How could treachery seep through walls guarded by men who'd die before speaking a word? Spies could be rooted out, traitors executed. Yet still, the leaks continued. The palace felt haunted not by ghosts of the dead, but by living conspiracies whispering beyond his reach. Then one evening, long after most had left the council chamber, an advisor known only for his cunning and survival instincts leaned closer. His voice was a hiss meant for the emperor's ears alone.
Your Majesty, perhaps the traitors do not walk on 2 feet. Perhaps they have feathers.
Liu Zhen's brow furrowed, disbelief flickering in his eyes. The advisor pressed on.
The roosters, sire. Every morning they crow, and at dawn your enemies already move. What if these birds are no mere farm creatures, but messengers, spies, trained to signal your foes?
Madness? Certainly. Yet in a world where betrayal lurked in every smile, it made a twisted kind of sense. A thought once planted grows roots. That night, as Liu Zhen lay awake, the distant crow of a rooster pierced the silence. It sounded less like nature, more like a warning bell, a call to his enemies. And in that moment, the most powerful man in China decided the birds had to die. By dawn, the empire trembled under a new command. Imperial heralds rode through villages on sweating horses, their voices cutting through the mist. By decree of the Son of Heaven, all chickens shall be slain. None may remain alive within the emperor's lands. The word seemed absurd at first, even comical, but the sharpened blades at the herald's sides made laughter impossible. Within hours, squads of soldiers stormed farms and homesteads, kicking down coop doors as terrified families begged for mercy. Feathers filled the air, spinning like snowflakes under a blood-red sunrise. Axes meant for war swung down on defenseless birds. Children cried as their pets were dragged away, their little hands clutching empty baskets where eggs had been gathered every morning. The clucking chorus that had greeted generations was replaced by screams, sobs, and the wet thud of slaughter. Defiance meant treason. Those who tried to hide a hen or smuggle an egg were accused of conspiracy, dragged before makeshift tribunals, and punished in the public square. Neighbors turned on one another, desperate to prove their loyalty. The smell of burned feathers and spilled blood clung to every street, every alleyway, every field that once echoed with life. By week's end, silence ruled the dawn. No rooster dared break the new order of the empire, not because they were loyal subjects, but because none were left alive. It was a silence so heavy it felt unnatural, as if even nature had bent beneath the emperor's paranoia. The land obeyed not out of respect, but fear, a fear so deep it seeped into the soil and stained it for generations to come. At first, the emperor's madness seemed to bring peace. There were no more crows at dawn, no more spies announcing his movements to the world. The silence stretched for miles across the empire, a strange, unsettling calm. But nature abhors silence, and soon it struck back. Without chickens to peck at swarming insects, the fields were overrun. Locusts chewed through crops, worms rotted roots, and harvest after harvest failed. Eggs, once a staple in every kitchen, vanished completely. Families starved, mothers boiled tree bark and leather straps to feed their children. Those who had once lived in harmony with their small flocks now feared even to whisper the word chicken, as if it were treason itself. In some villages, children grew up having never seen the creature that had once been as common as sunlight. Old women would speak of hens laying warm eggs at dawn, of roosters crowing to greet the day, and the young would listen wide-eyed, as though hearing a fairy tale. The bird had been erased not just from farms, but from memory, from life itself. And yet, above all this suffering, the imperial palace stood untouched, its golden gates closed to the cries of the hungry. Inside, the man who had started it all convinced himself that he had saved his empire from invisible enemies. The people, powerless and broken, learned a cruel truth. A ruler's paranoia could kill not just his foes, but everything that once made life bearable. The slaughter should have calmed his fears. But fear is never satisfied. It feeds, grows, mutates. Months after the last bird vanished, the emperor began to suspect that his enemies had found new messengers. Dogs barking in the night became signals of betrayal. The whisper of wind against palace walls sounded like conspirators plotting his downfall. He ordered windows sealed, servants silenced, patrols doubled. Yet no fortress can keep out a haunted mind. Advisors, once bold, now spoke only in trembling tones. Rumors spread among them. The birds had cursed their killer. They said the souls of 1,000 slaughtered roosters circled the palace, crowing at his windows, scratching at his sanity. Some claimed they had seen the emperor wander halls barefoot, muttering to himself, clutching his head as if trying to block out phantom sounds only he could hear. He had conquered kingdoms, commanded legions, but now he fought an invisible war against ghosts of his own making. Alone in a palace of gold, Liu Zhen was no longer feared as a ruler. He was pitied as a man devoured by his own madness. Years passed, but the silence never lifted. The empire limped forward, scarred by famine, stripped of joy, haunted by memories of dawns that never sang. People learned to live without chickens, but they never learned to live without fear. And at the center of it all sat Liu Zhen, a ruler once crowned in glory, now hollow-eyed, pacing gilded halls like a prisoner of his own mind. It ended, not with rebellion nor assassination, but with a whisper of mortality. The emperor fell ill, consumed not by poison or sword, but by something darker, his own dread. Courtiers wrote of his final nights, raving to invisible flocks perched on his bedposts, begging them to forgive him, to stop their phantom crowing that echoed through the palace. When he died, it was said the first sound heard outside the gates was a distant rooster's cry, though no bird had been seen for years. His successor, young and horrified by what fear had wrought, rescinded the decree. Farmers were once again allowed to keep hens, rebuild their flocks, and bring eggs back to their tables. Slowly, the dawn chorus returned, fragile at first, then stronger with each passing year. Yet even generations later, old men would tell wide-eyed children the cautionary tale of the emperor who saw enemies in feathers and turned his empire into a graveyard of birds. The lesson lingered like smoke over the land. When paranoia wears the crown, even the smallest creatures can be hunted like kings, and an empire can bleed itself dry, chasing ghosts that were never there.